So my topic is Tokyo 2020's Olympics effect on the Japanese macroeconomy. And specifically, I wanted to see if there was a negative effect um, due to the postponement of the 2020 Olympics. I think this is an important question to answer because Japan's private and public sector heavily rely on foreign investment, and it's going to be important to understand the short run and long run effects so we can present a clear, honest picture of the health of the Japanese economy. This is an economic question because it's directly linked to Japan's past, present, and future fiscal policy, government spending. So before we go into that, I wanted to give you guys a little bit of a overview of the Japanese macroeconomy. It's the third largest in the world with a GDP of 5.15 trillion US dollars, and it's right behind the US and China. It's also maintained an inflation rate below 3% for the past couple of decades, but it has been very stagnant. That's a really big concern and a reason why a lot of people didn't want to host the Olympics because Japan's economy hasn't been growing for a very long time. So before we go into Japan's Olympic spending, I wanted to look at past Olympics in developed countries. So here we have Spain and Australia. And as we can see, I thought it was interesting to see this pattern where leading up to the Olympics, they had a decline in their annual growth of GDP. And the year after, it fell and then it bounced right back up. No long-term effects. Well, China's economy has always been growing, so I feel like that their growth falling from 15% to 10% isn't really a big deal. But Brazil paints a different side of this picture because it's kind of been like the poster child for the negative effects of hosting an Olympic could have. They're still struggling with a lot of the infrastructure and bills they have to pay. So here, looking at Japan's Olympic spending in 2013, when they first won the bid for the games, they said it would only cost like 7.3 billion US dollars. But as of December 2019, right before the pandemic hit, the cost had already risen to 12.6 billion dollars. And national audit suggested that it's probably much more than that, and there was an extra $9.7 billion being spent in Olympic-related costs. And they haven't denied this, so it's probably true. And the International Olympic Committee said in May 2020, when they decided to postpone the games, it would cost an extra 800 million or so dollars in direct spending. And in indirect spending, which is the graph you see here, it would cost $23 million. That's what the Bureau of Olympic and Paralympic Games suggested. So what I wanted to highlight here is that yes, 800 million or even $823 million is a lot, but against a $5 trillion economy, that's not a lot. The impact of the postponement of the 2020 games is very limited, in my opinion. If we take into account the investment in public transportation and infrastructure and the development, it's not that's really good in the future for the Japanese economy. So it's not 0.2% is not going to break the Japanese economy. I think it's overshadowed by the effects of COVID-19. GDP fell between April and June by 7.8%. Japan has spent they had their biggest ever stimulus package of 1.1 trillion US dollars and spent roughly 234 trillion yen, which is 2.2 trillion dollars on to combat the fallout from the virus. And so that's roughly 40% of Japan's GDP, which is mind-blowing. But okay, so additional data I would need to have a better answer is the revenue of the Tokyo 2020 Olympics. How much will it actually generate? Like, I think it's different in every Olympic game that I looked at, so we won't know until it actually happens. And then, of course, the recovery of COVID-19. Will people travel? Will people come to Olympics? Stay in hotels? Will it happen? And then the use of the new infrastructure. If the pandemic lasts and we don't find use for the new stadiums, if there aren't being tickets sold and these places aren't being used, that could all go to waste. And that's part of the revenue that Japan is hoping for. Thank you very much.